You ever notice how the people who scream the loudest about doing good are sometimes the ones with the most to hide? Let's talk about Ashton Kutcher. Yes, that Ashton Kutcher, the heartthrob from that 70s show, the billionaire tech investor, the man who once cried in front of Congress while pleading for better protection of children from predators. The same man who co-founded Thorn, a company aimed at fighting online child exploitation. A Hollywood golden boy turned real-life superhero, at least on paper. But behind all the headlines, the speeches, and the applause, there's a darker story starting to surface. A story involving secret parties, hidden cameras, and a long-time friendship with a man currently facing some of the most disturbing accusations in modern entertainment history. That man, Sean Diddy Combs. And the connections between Ashton and Diddy might be far more tangled and far more disturbing than anyone expected. When Ashton Kutcher stood before Congress in 2017, his voice cracked as he described the horrors of child trafficking. His tears were real. His pain felt raw. He was praised as a man of integrity, an A-lister using his platform to make a difference. People saw him as a rare Hollywood figure who actually cared. He co-founded Thorn, which partnered with law enforcement agencies to detect online abuse. He claimed to have seen footage from FBI raids so horrific that it haunted him. And for years, the media treated him like a poster boy for virtue in an industry full of scandals. But behind that polished image was a close friendship that raised more than a few eyebrows. One that, until recently, no one dared to look too closely at. Kutcher and Diddy weren't just casual acquaintances. They weren't just see you at the awards show kind of friends. According to insiders, they were tight. The kind of tight that meant Ashton was a regular at Diddy's penthouse parties. The kind of tight that meant training together, vacationing together, even throwing joint events. And what seemed like harmless Hollywood camaraderie now feels different. Because lately, Diddy's name hasn't just been linked to music or fashion, it's been splashed across federal documents, connected to raids, lawsuits, and horrific accusations. Everything from underage trafficking to hidden surveillance cameras at parties where the guest list reads like a who's who of A-list elites. And Ashton's name? It's allegedly on more than one of those lists. This isn't about celebrity drama anymore, it's about something deeper, something darker. Sources from within the industry claim Ashton wasn't just attending these parties, he was comfortable there. So comfortable, in fact, that he allegedly brought others into the fold. Enter Ava, Diddy's adopted daughter. We're calling her Ava for her protection, but those who know the scene know exactly who we're talking about. She grew up in the center of the storm, surrounded by money, power, and secrecy. She knew which rooms were off limits. She knew what it meant when the music got too loud and the guests got too young. And now, she's talking, not in press conferences, not yet, but through quiet leaks, through insiders and friends, and what she's saying is chilling. Ashton wasn't just a guest at these infamous parties, he was allegedly part of the machinery, a recruiter, a trusted face, someone who could pull a young girl aside and say, "You belong here," with a smile that masked something much more sinister. There's a moment, captured forever on YouTube, where Ashton sits across from Sean Evans on Hot Ones. It's meant to be a fun interview, light, spicy, harmless, until Diddy's name comes up. When asked about the legendary Diddy parties, Ashton freezes. He fidgets. He stammers. And then he says something that, in hindsight, hits like a warning. I can't tell that one either. The panic on his face isn't staged. The laughter isn't natural. You can practically see him calculating how much to reveal, how much to hide. And maybe back then it was just a weird moment. But now, with everything that's surfacing, it feels like the beginning of an unraveling. Because that wasn't just a flinch, that was fear. Ava wasn't just a passive witness. She grew up in Diddy's world. From an early age, she saw the celebrities, the champagne, the secrets. And she learned quickly, don't ask questions, don't speak unless spoken to, and never, ever talk about what happens behind those velvet curtains. But something changed after the federal raids. Suddenly, agents were storming Diddy's homes, hard drives were seized, security footage was reviewed, and Ava realized something. The silence that protected them all was beginning to crack. That's when the leaks started. Screenshots, guest lists, whispers on encrypted forums, and one name came up again and again, Ashton Kutcher. According to sources close to Ava, Ashton wasn't just attending the exclusive gatherings, he was helping coordinate them. He allegedly introduced Ava to other guests, reassured her she was part of the family, and helped her feel comfortable. all while being one of the most visible faces of anti-trafficking activism. That contradiction is what makes her story so devastating. Because if it's true, if Ashton really stood on both sides of the line, then everything we thought we knew about him collapses. Think about it. Ashton Kutcher giving tearful speeches about protecting children by day, then allegedly sitting in the corner of a penthouse suite filled with underage girls by night. The internet's starting to put the pieces together. Old interviews are being rewatched, past statements are being dissected, and the image of a tech-savvy activist trying to change the world is slowly being replaced by something more complicated, something darker. How could someone so publicly aligned with stopping exploitation be connected to a man now facing multiple federal lawsuits for exactly that? Even if Ashton didn't do anything illegal, what did he see? What did he know? And why didn't he say anything? Then came the Danny Masterson scandal. Multiple women stepped forward with horrifying stories of being drugged, assaulted, and silenced by Ashton's That 70s Show co-star. The allegations had been bubbling for years, but when the guilty verdict finally came, the spotlight turned to Ashton and Mila Kunis. Why? Because both of them had written letters to the judge, letters asking for leniency, letters calling Masterson a role model, letters that were meant to stay private but went public in the worst possible way. The backlash was swift. People who once hailed Ashton as a hero began calling him a hypocrite. His past words were re-examined and his silence on other matters became deafening. He stepped down from Thorn, his own organization, citing that he didn't want to be a distraction. But for many, it was already too late. The mask had slipped, and then Mila vanished. No social posts, no interviews, no red carpets. At first, fans thought maybe she was laying low after the Masterson letters, but others started wondering, was it something else? Insiders claim Mila had warned Ashton to stay away from Diddy years ago, that she didn't trust the scene, didn't like the vibe, didn't want to be involved. Some say she even knew about the surveillance rumors and urged Ashton to cut ties. But he didn't listen. And now that everything's unraveling, her silence is starting to speak volumes. Is she protecting herself? Preparing for fallout? Or distancing herself from something she saw coming a long time ago? There's a name that keeps resurfacing in this twisted web: Brittany Murphy. She was a rising star, beloved by fans and known for her quirky charm. But her death in 2009 left Hollywood stunned. Officially, it was ruled pneumonia and anemia, but the details never sat right, especially after her husband, Simon Monjack, died under eerily similar circumstances just months later. Here's where it gets strange. Brittany had ties to both Ashton and Diddy. She was photographed at their events. She was part of that inner circle. Friends say near the end, she became paranoid. She believed she was being watched, that she knew things she wasn't supposed to know, that she wanted to speak out, but didn't know who she could trust. Could Brittany have seen something that made her a threat? No one's saying it outright, but the whispers are getting louder. The phrase that keeps coming up among those following the Diddy investigation is the tapes. According to insiders connected to the federal investigation, there are hours of surveillance footage pulled from Diddy's homes, penthouses, studios, and even his yacht. These tapes weren't party highlights. They weren't meant for TMZ. These were allegedly private recordings, hidden cameras, footage no one knew existed, until now. And Ashton? He reportedly appears in more than one of them. Sources say he's seen seated next to Diddy, engaging with underage guests, sometimes helping coordinate activities for the night. One source even described a moment where Ashton looked visibly uncomfortable, but didn't leave. He stayed. He stayed long enough to be remembered, long enough to be recorded. And then there's the alleged audio recording. Captured inside Diddy's studio, 3 voices, one of them speculated to be Ashton's, can be heard joking about initiations, followed by someone saying, "Welcome to the industry," in a tone that doesn't sound funny at all. It sounds like a warning, or worse, a confession. After the raids, one phrase started trending on deep forum threads and anonymous blogs. The Doomsday File. What is it? According to multiple whistleblower accounts, it's a sealed folder collected during the federal takedown. Allegedly, it contains hours of uncut surveillance footage, hundreds of pages of NDAs and contracts, private transcripts of high-profile conversations, and names, so many names of celebrities, politicians, and executives who were either complicit or present. And Ashton Kutcher? His name is reportedly in that file multiple times. One anonymous federal source described the contents of the file as career-ending at best, criminal at worst. And here's the real kicker. The source didn't say if the file would leak. They said when. Because if this file ever goes public, it could burn down half of Hollywood, and Ashton might be at the center of the blaze. There's a rumor floating around that Ashton started cooperating with the FBI sometime in early 2024, that he saw the writing on the wall, that his lawyers urged him to step back, to shut up, to run. He reportedly cut ties with Diddy, stopped attending events, scrubbed past posts, stepped down from Thorn under the guise of not being a distraction. But people aren't buying it, because walking away after the storm begins doesn't mean you didn't dance in the rain. And if Ashton really did know what was going on, if he sat in those rooms, saw what others ignored, helped facilitate the illusion of safety, then silence isn't just self-preservation, it's complicity. Ava's alleged guest list had dozens of names, artists, influencers, billionaires. But there was one name that stood out. One name that came up on 3 separate occasions. One name that appeared next to Diddy's on more than one RSVP line. Ashton Kutcher. He wasn't a background extra. He wasn't a just passing through type. He was reportedly in the room, at the center, close enough to see everything. Some say Ava is preparing a formal statement. Others say she's being pressured to stay silent. But those in her circle insist she remembers everything. Every hallway, every face, every whispered warning. And if she goes public, if she drops even a fraction of what she's seen, Ashton's story might unravel for good. Ashton Kutcher built a brand on saving children, on exposing darkness, on standing for something real in a world full of fakery. But if even half of what's been whispered is true, then maybe the man who cried in Congress isn't the man we thought he was. Maybe that wasn't just emotion on his face. Maybe it was guilt. Hollywood has always been good at protecting its own, at silencing the inconvenient, at writing over the messy parts of the script. But Ava? She's not playing by their rules. And if her voice finally breaks through the noise, it won't just be Ashton's reputation on the line, it'll be the entire industry that protected him. Because some secrets were never meant to stay buried, and the louder you preach, the harder the fall when the truth comes out. Captured inside Diddy's studio, 3 voices, one of them speculated to be Ashton's, can be heard joking about initiations, followed by someone saying, "Welcome to the industry," in a tone that doesn't sound funny at all. It sounds like a warning, or worse, a confession.